Third down and 20.
The Colts signed Eric Fisher, the former Chargers tackle, to kind of beef up their line. He's going to fill in
Chiefs
for Anthony.
tackle, right?
Oh, did I say Chargers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew I screwed that up too. Yes, yeah, Chiefs. Eric Fisher from the Chiefs. He's going to replace Anthony Costanzo when he's healthy. I guess it's significant because it does help the line, one of the better lines in the league, which surprisingly was not as good last year. But this did spark an interesting pre-debate with you guys. What do we think about the Colts offense going forward? Some of us seemed higher than others. Frank, if you want to talk your
All
piece.
right. So here's the thing, right? Because I think the Colts passing offense for the most part is being undervalued or accurately valued, right? No one's going out here and buying a ton of the Colts receiving options. It seems like they don't seem to be very popular. But Jonathan Taylor is all the rave right now. He's even climbed possibly to RB1 in some startups I've seen over Christian McCaffrey. And that part is where I disagree, because I think that the Colts offense is going to be not necessarily. I think in terms of talent, it's pretty good, but I think that the Jaguars got a whole lot better, and it's hard for the Texans to be any worse than they were last year. So, like, you look at the end of the season last year, the Colts were averaging, I have it here on team rankings, last 3 games, 188 yards per game running the football, which was only behind in the last 3 games Baltimore at 263, which is freaking ridiculous. But Baltimore does have a running quarterback that will inflate those numbers slightly. Indy does not have that. I don't think that Jonathan Taylor, even though I like Jonathan Taylor, I liked him as a rookie a whole lot. I think he's a good back. Don't think he's RB1. And I don't think he's going to be getting 150, 180 yards a game all through next season like he kind of was at the second half of the year last year against a bunch of very poor run defenses. So I know you guys disagree with me. I am definitely a little bit more lukewarm on the Colts, and I think that their rushing offense is going to be just above average, nothing insane.
Well, here's the thing, Frank. I don't really disagree with you on that part, actually. I think if you were to ask me who's going to be the overall running back one, like Jonathan Taylor probably is, especially in like half-point PPR, like Jonathan Taylor is probably not breaking my top 4 or 5, right? I still think it's like McCaffrey and Kamara, Saquon, Dalvin Cook. I'd even throw in, I think DeAndre Swift would have a better chance of being the running back 1 overall. Derrick Henry. But, I mean, just like the receiving work is so big for running backs. Like, it literally takes Derrick Henry over 2,000 yards for him to be the running back 1. So I think those pass-catching guys, while Jonathan Taylor did catch more than we thought he would, like, it still isn't like nearly as much compared to those other guys. I just think, like, if you were to tell me, like, point at one of these guys and tell me who's going to be an RB1 over, like, a running back 1 as in 1 through 12, 3 years from now, like Jonathan Taylor would be my first pick. Like that's why I think he's ranked so highly on Dynasty. It's just like his outlook is just way longer. He's got a longer lifespan to him than these other guys.
No, I agree with that, and I like Jonathan Taylor. I was saying last year that you should take him number 1 overall over Joe Burrow.
You did say that, yes.
I was in love with Jonathan Taylor, and I think he's a great running back. I'm just not ready to put him above McCaffrey or Saquon. I think it's kind of as simple as that for me. I think that McCaffrey and Saquon are just better prospects, and they're more dynamic runners. Even if Jonathan Taylor is in a really great scenario, I just struggle. I think that everyone is taking that second half of the year last year and expecting that to be the norm. I think that that's more of an outlier. I expect him to be more around like 80 yards a game, 90 yards a game, instead of it seems like everyone's thinking, oh, well, Jonathan Taylor, he's going to be averaging $120 and a touchdown every game. Behind that great Colts line, he's going to be just going off. And I'm tempering my expectations a little bit.
Where would you have him running back ranking in Dynasty? Is he number 3 after those top 2 guys to you?
Yeah, I think I'd have him at 3 or 4, somewhere around there. Probably 3.
I think it's important to note, Frank, that with what you said, like he only broke the 100-yard mark 3 times last year, receiving wise. I mean, running wise, rushing wise, without any receiving yards in play. He only broke 100 yards 3 times last year, which is not what you would have thought from Jonathan Taylor if
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I completely agree. It really feels like because the dynasty community, before we move on, has done this a whole lot. They have taken the last 4 or 5 games of the season for some players, and sometimes it kind of happens, other times it doesn't. And they've said, "Oh, well, we can expect that the entire season, right?" Tyler Higbee was a big one. I remember Tyler Higbee 2 years ago, I think it was, had a really good stretch of 4 or 5 games at the end of the year. And everyone was saying, "Oh, buy up Tyler Higbee. We saw what he's going to do at the end of the year last year. He's going to do it again. He's going to do it the whole year." And then he flops. So I think that this is a really big problem that fantasy football players, not just dynasty players, I think redraft is especially as guilty of this, maybe even more so than dynasty players, but they'll take what a guy did at the end of the year and say, "Oh, this is going to be the norm," and it really blows up in people's faces.
Yeah, so that's my thing. So I have Jonathan Taylor in our league, right? And personally, I do feel like he's at this point kind of overvalued, but it's like I don't know where to pivot off him to like maintain that value and everything, and like like it's just tough for me. Like I want to move. I would want to move Jonathan Taylor to still keep that like top tier talent because I do think the future outlook of Jonathan Taylor might dip a little bit this year. But there's not a lot of players that I like look out and feel like comfortable with them in their 3-year outlook as much as I do Jonathan Taylor. So it's like it's such like a weird spot for me to be in. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Jonathan Taylor for me, I understand it's really tough between him and Saquon. I think I lean Taylor at 2 right now. The main only thing that puts him ahead is I think kind of injury concerns with Saquon. And they could just have been the past 2 seasons and been completely fine after. But he has missed how many games in the past 2 years?
He surprisingly missed less games than you would have thought 2 years ago. Because it felt like he went down early and everyone was like, oh, like he's done for. And then like he came back only like a few weeks later from an injury that most people thought he'd be out for the majority of the season. He only played 2 games last year and played 13 2 years ago.
13. Okay. So he missed around what, 14,
17
games the past 2 seasons. I still love Saquon. The thing that makes it close for me is I think Saquon's receiving ability, because I think Taylor is going to have probably better rushing stats. Because also in part because the Giants O-line really isn't that good, and they didn't do much to improve it this offseason. They improved the weapons around Daniel Jones, but they didn't really improve their O-line. So I don't blame anyone who has Saquon RB2. It's just I think it's kind of just I want to see how Taylor does. Like Taylor impressed me last year with the receiving work that he did have, and how well he did in that aspect. I thought that would kind of be a weakness, mainly his only weakness. So that's kind of where I have him at. I'll list it as like a 2A, 2B between him and Saquon, but I'm still like high on him. I have no issues with Jonathan Taylor. Like getting the hype that he's having. For me, the only thing is more just how do those like receivers do? Like Pittman's getting a lot of hype. Can he live up to that? Is he going to be that number 1 receiver in Indy? How's Carson Wentz going to do? Or are we going to get forget even 2017. If you get 2017 Carson Wentz, that's insane. But are we going to get like 2019 Wentz? Are we going to get closer to 2020? I think that's going to be huge in kind of dictating how that whole offense works out.
Here's the problem I have with a lot of what you said. In terms of being like a top 3 running back, that's why I'm scared for Jonathan Taylor, because I think we can see him kind of regress to where his talent actually lies, which is more of like, okay, I don't think he's as good as Nick Chubb was, for example. Even though he might be younger and he's like the sexier asset to have, I could easily see Nick Chubb having a better year than Jonathan Taylor. Now, Jonathan Taylor, in terms of being a top 12 running back in the league, I don't think anyone's scared of that. And that's why I like Jonathan Taylor. And kind of like JT said, for the foreseeable future, for the next 2 to 3 seasons, we can all expect Jonathan Taylor to be a top 12 running back. That's why I think Jonathan Taylor is valuable. In terms of next season, because you said that you think that Jonathan Taylor has a better chance of having better rushing stats than Saquon, I completely disagree. I think Saquon is going to explode next season. I finally saw at the end of the season last year a Giants offensive line that was not dog crap. They made Wayne Gallman and Alfred Morris actually relevant. Think about that for a second. Wayne Gallman and Alfred Morris. Not Alfred Morris obviously wasn't fantasy relevant, but he was getting around 4 yards a carry. Out the 33-year-old Alfred Morris and Wayne Gallman, Wayne the forever Jag Gallman. It's not like after the end of the season last year, he was a coveted player by any stretch of the imagination. I think Saquon, the only problem, you just stay healthy. He stays healthy. The Giants offense should be a whole lot more dangerous. They can't do what the Steelers did week 1 and just sell out to stop Saquon and have Daniel Jones fuck up a whole bunch. I think Saquon is going to be great next year.
I think he'll be great also. Don't get me wrong. I think he's going to be a top 4 fantasy running back. I'm just comparing it to Taylor. Taylor still did finish, RB5 last season? And that was with,
I believe so, yeah.
That was with, I don't know if you guys remember his midseason skid when everyone was like, oh, he's Trent Richardson. There was a 4-week stretch in the middle of the season where he wasn't looking too bright, where he scored 5.6, 8.9, 6.7.
Yeah, but he was
4 and
he
standard
was carried,
RB6
him and
PPR.
Henry to a certain extent were carried by the fact that they got to play 2 of the league's worst rushing defenses twice.
And they're
That's
going
true.
to again this year.
Yeah, but they both have completely new coaching staffs.
They don't have completely new players.
I mean, did you not see the Jaguars completely redo basically their entire roster? We don't know. What if Tim Tebow's playing defense? What if they're just saying, oh, Tim Tebow, he's not tight end, he's playing defense?
God won't save you from Jonathan Taylor.